pen feels heavy in my hand, heavier than it should, like it soaked up every phone call, every insult, every sleepless hour. The lawyer's office is too polished, too quiet. Mahogany desk, soft leather chairs, a clock that clicks each second into place as if it's building a verdict. Her perfume, floral, expensive, hangs in the air like a reminder that some people live in a world where nothing rots, nothing breaks. Rain ticks the window. October rain, cold and steady, tapping the glass like impatient fingers. My phone buzzes again. Dominic. Call number 47 this week. I don't answer. Haven't answered in 3 days. Mrs. Patterson, the lawyer says gently, professionally, like she's trying to keep her voice from catching on my story. Are you absolutely certain? My hand hovers above the signature line. The ink on the pen tip glistens under the overhead light. I can smell the vents, cool air, and the faint chemical sting of printer toner. I can hear paper shifting as she slides another document toward me. 4 words. That's all it took to destroy my son's world. 4 words that will haunt him. But I didn't start here. I started 3 weeks ago, standing in a wedding venue 4 hours from home, with champagne in my hand and pride swelling in my chest so big it almost hurt. Dominic was laughing with his groomsmen, his tie slightly crooked the way it always got when he was excited. He looked so handsome, my only son, grown into a man. I kept thinking how his father would have looked today. Marcus would have told embarrassing stories, danced too hard, laughed too loud. Marcus would have squeezed my hand during the vows like he used to do when he wanted to tell me, without words, that life was good. I didn't know that in less than an hour my son would walk toward me with his jaw set and his eyes made of stone. I didn't know he would ask me to leave his wedding reception. I didn't know he would choose a woman he'd known for 2 years over the mother who raised him alone for 24. And I definitely didn't know that the next morning, when my phone rang and his name flashed across the screen, he wouldn't call to apologize. He would call to ask for something. Mom, he said, bright and casual, like he was asking to borrow a tool. I need the property papers. Something in me shifted, then cold, clear, final. Not anger, not hysteria, just clarity. Like a door closing softly but permanently. That's why I'm here now, under fluorescent lights while October rain keeps time on the window. I lower the pen. The scratch of it across paper sounds like tearing fabric. Corin Elizabeth Patterson. One signature, then another, then another. My hand moves faster as my hesitation drains out page by page. The lawyer witnesses each one with practiced strokes. My phone buzzes again. Dominic, call 48. There's one more thing, I say, and my voice doesn't shake. I want to make a call. She slides the desk phone toward me. The receiver is cool against my palm. I dial the number I know by heart. It rings once, twice. Hello, Dominic answers, breathless. Mom, is that you? I look at the signed document spread across the desk like sealed doors. Dominic, I say, listen carefully, I'm going to say this once. And then those 4 words, the ones you don't get yet. Not until you understand how we got here. June heat poured through the reception hall's massive windows, the kind that makes your skin prickle even with air conditioning fighting for its life. I'd been hovering near the dessert table for 20 minutes, watching servers arrange miniature cakes on silver platters like tiny crowns. My dress collar felt too tight. Navy blue, knee-length formal, the way Dominic said Bridget wanted for family of the wedding party. $200 I didn't really have, but I'd bought it anyway because mothers do that. Because I still believed showing up was the same thing as mattering. I'd driven 4 hours to get there, left at 5 in the morning, stopped once for gas and coffee, arrived early enough to help if anyone needed anything. Dominic had texted me at 7. We're good, Mom. Just relax and enjoy the day. So I did. I smiled at cousins I barely recognized, and at Bridget's parents, polished, confident people who looked like they belonged to venues with stone walls and ivy. I held my champagne and pretended my feet didn't ache in my shoes. I watched my son laugh and dance and bask in attention. The ceremony had been beautiful. Bridget wore lace that probably cost more than my car payment. The flowers were extravagant in a way that made my practical brain quietly flinch, but I didn't say a word. I cried at the vows. I clapped when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride." I told myself this was what sacrifice looked like. You give, and the person you love shines. In my purse was a card. Inside the card was a check for $8,000 every extra shift I'd taken at the hospital over the past year, nights that left me dizzy with exhaustion. Mornings I woke up with my back aching and my hands swollen. Money I'd meant to keep for emergencies, but Dominic asked if I could help with the wedding, and what kind of mother says no when her son looks hopeful? I'd planned to give it to him during the reception, in a quiet moment when we could talk privately, when I could hug him and tell him how proud I was, how Marcus would have loved this day. Marcus gone 12 years now, a heart attack at 46 that stole him so fast I still sometimes expect to hear his footsteps in the hallway. Dominic has his laugh, his expressions, little echoes that used to comfort me. That day, they didn't. A bead of condensation slid down my glass and dripped onto my fingers. "Mom." I turned. Dominic stood 3 feet away. His jaw was set, muscles working under his skin. I knew that look. I'd seen it at 7 when he swore he could ride a bike without training wheels. At 16 when he announced he was leaving for college across the country. At 22 when he told me he was moving in with Bridget. The look meant a decision had already been made. "The ceremony was beautiful, honey," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. Bridget looked absolute, "You need to leave." The words hit like cold water, like a slap, like falling down stairs. Around us, people laughed. Music thumped. Someone's uncle attempted the electric slide near the DJ booth, enthusiastic and terrible. The room kept moving, like nothing had happened. "What?" I said, because surely I'd misheard. "You need to leave," Dominic repeated, and this time he still wouldn't meet my eyes. His gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder, as if speaking to air was easier than speaking to me. "Bridget doesn't want you here," he said. "You're making her uncomfortable." My fingers tightened around the champagne flute. The glass felt suddenly slick, dangerous. I was afraid of dropping it, afraid of the crash drawing every eye. "Dominic," I whispered, "I haven't even spoken to her since—" "Just go, Mom." Finally, he looked at me, and his eyes were flat, hard. "Please don't make this difficult." Difficult. The word echoed through my head like a label slapped onto my forehead, and behind him, at the head table, Bridget watched us with a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. A smile like a knife. I stared at my son, trying to find the boy I knew inside the man standing in front of me. 24, college degree, good job, tailored suit, a life that looked clean and shiny from the outside, and yet here he was telling his mother to leave his wedding because his bride felt uncomfortable. I drove 4 hours, I managed. My throat felt thick, like each word had to push through mud. "I haven't done anything wrong. I've barely even—" "Bridget thinks it would be better if you left," he cut in. Voice lowered like he didn't want anyone to overhear, like he was ashamed, but not ashamed enough to stop. "She says you're controlling, that you try to run everything, that you've been giving her looks all day." Controlling. I'd given Bridget space when they started dating. I'd smiled through the months she lived in my guest room and never once offered to help with groceries. I'd bitten my tongue when she chose a venue that cost more than my yearly salary. I'd worked extra shifts to hand them $8,000 and called it helping. And now I was controlling because I existed in the same room as her. Dominic glanced toward the head table. "She's waiting for you to leave," he said. "She's upset. This is her special day. I don't want her stressed. Her special day. Not their day. Not our day. The way I still stupidly thought of it, my son stepping into a life I'd helped build with my hands and my exhaustion and my love. Just hers. I felt something go still inside me. Not rage, not tears. Stillness. "Are you sure?" I asked, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes." No hesitation, no flicker of doubt, just go. So I did. I set my champagne glass down on the dessert table. The soft clink against linen sounded too loud. A server glanced at me, then looked away quickly when she saw my face. I didn't hug Dominic, didn't kiss his cheek, didn't touch him at all. I turned and walked through the reception hall with my head up, my purse clutched tight under my arm, my heels clicking on hardwood like a countdown. The music seemed louder as I moved away. Laughter sharper. Every face I passed felt like judgment, like they could somehow see the invisible stamp on my chest. Removed. Unwanted. Outside, the June sun was blinding. Heat hit me like a wall. The parking lot stretched wide and shimmering, rows of cars glittering in light. Mine sat far at the end, an old practical sedan with a dent in the bumper, and no business being anywhere near a venue this expensive. I walked across hot asphalt. Heat radiated up through my shoes. Sweat gathered at the base of my spine. By the time I reached my car, my face was wet, sweat or tears. I couldn't tell anymore. I got in and started the engine. The air conditioning blasted hot air at first, then gradually cooled. In the rearview mirror, the venue sat perfect and bright with stone walls and ivy. Inside, my son was dancing and eating expensive food and drinking expensive wine, toasting his future with his wife. And I sat alone in a parking lot with an $8,000 check still in my purse. I drove the 4 hours home in silence. No music, no podcast. Just tires on asphalt, the whoosh of passing cars, and the steady hum of my own thoughts scraping raw against each other. I stopped once for gas at a nearly empty station. A teenage clerk barely looked up. I paid, used the bathroom, bought a bottle of water I didn't drink, then drove again. Near midnight, I pulled into my driveway. The porch light was on left on that morning, when I'd still believed I was going to a celebration and coming back whole. The house sat quiet and dark except for that one circle of light. No one waiting, no one to ask how it went, no one to hold me while I fell apart. I sat in the car staring at the house Marcus and I bought 30 years ago when we were young and broke and stupidly in love. The house where we brought Dominic home, the house where Marcus died next to me, his hand going cold in mine while I screamed for help that couldn't arrive fast enough. Out in the dark, I could just make out the property overgrown beds, fence posts starting to rot, the barn roof that needed repairs, 40 acres. My grandfather's land, my father's work, my husband's last request, and, I'd always assumed, someday my son's. I got out of the car and sat on the porch steps without going inside. When the sky began to pale, I made chamomile tea, Marcus's tea when he couldn't sleep, and stared out at the oak trees like they might tell me what to do next. At 8:30, my phone rang. Dominic's name lit up the screen. For one foolish second, I thought, apology. I answered anyway. "Mom, hey." His voice was bright, casual. "Quick question, can you send me the property papers?" I was on my knees in the front garden when he asked. Dirt packed under my fingernails, sweat gathering at my temples despite the early hour. The physical ache in my back felt almost comforting. Something honest. Something I could point to and name. "The property papers," I repeated, because my brain needed the words said twice before they became real. "Yeah," Dominic said easily. "For the Colorado land. Bridget and I were talking, and we think it'd be perfect for development. Her uncle's a contractor, successful guy. He says we could subdivide it, build like 6 or 7 houses. The market's hot right now. We could make a fortune." Development, subdivide. 6 or 7 houses where my grandfather's oak trees stood, where my father built that barn with his own hands over 3 summers, where Marcus proposed to me in the meadow with his hands shaking because he was nervous even though we'd been together for years. Dominic kept talking, voice bright with the excitement he got when he thought he'd invented a brilliant plan. "We'd split profit with you, obviously," he said. "Probably 60-40, since we'd be doing the work on our end. But you'd still make a couple $100,000, maybe more. And you could move somewhere smaller, easier to manage. Bridget found this really nice senior community like 20 minutes from us. Activities, a pool. You'd love it." "I'm 58, I said, and I heard the distance in my own voice, like it belonged to someone watching from far away. "Yeah, I know," he laughed. Actually laughed like I was being dramatic. "But you know, eventually you'll need something easier. It's smart planning, Mom." Smart planning. The day after he threw me out of his wedding, he called to bulldoze my history and package my future into a community with scheduled crafts. A bee drifted past my ear and settled on lavender. Purple blooms bobbed in a mild breeze. The world stayed soft and ordinary while my son tried to turn my life into a transaction. "So, can you overnight the deed?" he asked. "We want to get started this week. Bridget's uncle has investors Thursday and he needs to see the documents." 3 days. He wanted 70 years of family legacy delivered overnight. I stood, knees cracking, and looked out over the property. The barn, weathered but steady, the fence line, the stretch of meadow, the trees my grandfather planted knowing he'd never sit under their full shade. The land my father worked every weekend for 40 years because he believed permanence mattered. The home Marcus made me promise hand cold in mine, voice fading that I would protect. "Dominic," I said slowly, "do you remember your grandfather's funeral?" Silence. "You gave the eulogy," I continued. "You stood in front of 200 people and talked about this land like it was sacred. You promised you'd protect it," he exhaled, irritated. "Mom, that was different. I was a kid. You were 20. People say things at funerals," he snapped. "It's emotional. You can't hold me to—" "You promised," I said, and my voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You looked right at us and promised." Bridget's voice cut in faintly in the background, sharp, impatient. Is she being difficult? Dominic's tone went colder. "So you're saying no? You won't send them?" I could have argued, could have begged him to remember who I was to him, could have listed every sacrifice like a receipt. Instead, a different kind of calm settled into me. "I need to go," I said. "Wait, Mom, we need those papers. This is huge. Don't you want me to succeed?" I had wanted him to succeed since the day he was born. I had wanted it so badly I built my whole life around it. "I'll call you back," I said. "When?" His impatience sharpened. "This is time sensitive." I hung up. He called again immediately. I declined. Again and again. By the time I finished weeding the flower bed, there were more missed calls, more texts. Selfish, ridiculous. You're ruining everything. The messages turned desperate, then angry, then threatening, like love was something you could demand by force. That night, when the phone rang again, I finally answered. Dominic sounded exhausted, certain he could wear me down. "You have to be realistic," he said. "You're not getting younger. The property just sits there, not generating income." I looked around my living room at the photographs lining the walls. Dominic at 5, grinning with a fish in his hands. Dominic at 12 with his piano trophy. Dominic at 18 in his graduation gown. Dominic at 22 with a diploma I helped pay for by working myself ragged. "Do you know what your father said before he died?" I asked. He went quiet. "He made me promise to keep this land in the family," I said, "no matter what happens." "Dad's been gone 12 years, Dominic said, voice distant. "Things change." "You're right," I said softly. "Things do change." Hope lifted his tone. "So you'll send them?" "No," I said. "Not now, not ever." A beat of stunned silence. Then anger. "You can't do that. I'm your son. It's my inheritance." "It was never your inheritance," I said, "and I'm done being treated like a resource." Days later, I sat across from Patricia Nolan, the lawyer, and told her everything: the wedding, the calls, the demands, Bridget's knife smile. She listened, then said, "There's a way to protect the land forever. A conservation trust, irrevocable, permanent. The land removed from my estate, untouchable, undevelopable, protected." The next morning, October rain tapped the window while I signed page after page. Then Dominic called again. "Mom?" His voice was breathless. "Please, we can work it out. I'm sorry. Just talk to me." I looked at the envelope of signed documents on the desk, and I finally gave him the 4 words. "It's not yours anymore." Silence swallowed the line. "What do you mean?" he whispered. "It means," I said, voice steady as stone, "the land is protected forever, and you will never touch it." And for the first time since the wedding, I felt the pen get light in my hand, because legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you refuse to let be destroyed.